When The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson ruled late-night television, millions of Americans tuned in every evening to laugh, unwind, and witness unforgettable moments in entertainment history. But one night in 1968 stood out from all the rest. The night an eccentric, falsetto-voiced performer named Tiny Tim stepped onto Johnny Carson's stage and became a national phenomenon. What happened that night changed his life forever, for better and for worse. Yet, behind the laughter and applause was a story far more complex, and ultimately, heartbreaking. Before that fateful appearance, Tiny Tim, born Herbert Corey in 1932 in New York City, was far from famous. He was a shy, awkward man obsessed with old songs from the early 1900s and fascinated by performers like Rudy Vallee. With his long curly hair, pale skin, and ever-present ukulele, he didn't look or sound like anyone else. For years, he performed in small clubs and cabarets, often mocked or ignored by audiences who didn't know what to make of him. But Tiny Tim didn't give up. He truly believed he was destined to be loved by millions. That belief became reality when Johnny Carson's producers discovered him. His first appearance on The Tonight Show in 1968 left both the studio audience and the viewers at home stunned. When Tiny Tim began singing Tiptoe Through the Tulips in his high-pitched falsetto, people didn't know whether to laugh or applaud, so they did both. Carson, known for his quick wit and skeptical humor, was clearly entertained, but also intrigued. Tiny Tim wasn't a joke. He was an original. Overnight, he became a sensation. Following that first performance, Tiny Tim returned to The Tonight Show numerous times. Each appearance was stranger and more fascinating than the last. Audiences couldn't get enough of his bizarre charm. He spoke in a gentle, old-fashioned way, referred to everyone as Miss or Mister, and seemed to exist in another world entirely, one untouched by modern cynicism. By the end of 1968, Tiny Tim had a record deal, a hit album, and his single Tiptoe Through the Tulips was climbing the charts. But the most memorable Tonight Show moment came on December 17, 1969, when Tiny Tim married his teenage sweetheart, Miss Vicky, live on air. The wedding drew more than 40 million viewers, making it one of the most watched late-night moments in television history. It was pure spectacle, a mix of comedy, romance, and absurdity. Johnny Carson himself looked half amused and half bewildered as Tiny Tim, in tears of joy, kissed his young bride before a national audience. Yet, behind that glittering moment of fame, Tiny Tim's life was beginning to unravel. The marriage quickly fell apart, lasting only a few years. His popularity began to fade as quickly as it had risen. The public, who once adored his oddball act, moved on to new fads and faces. By the mid-1970s, Tiny Tim was struggling financially and emotionally, performing in small clubs, circuses, and even state fairs just to make ends meet. Still, he never lost his passion for performing. He continued to appear on television and record albums even as his health began to decline. In the 1990s, he suffered multiple heart attacks but refused to stop singing. Tragically, during a performance in 1996, he collapsed on stage while singing his beloved Tiptoe Through the Tulips. He died shortly after, at the age of 64, doing exactly what he loved. What really happened to Tiny Tim on The Johnny Carson Show wasn't just the launch of a career, it was the beginning of a legend and the start of a personal tragedy. The show gave him everything he had ever dreamed of: fame, love, and validation. But it also took away his anonymity, his peace, and eventually his sense of self. Tiny Tim's life became a circus act for others to laugh at, rather than a dream fulfilled. Even so, Tiny Tim remains one of the most unforgettable figures in entertainment history. His sincerity, strangeness, and unshakable optimism made him a true original. Someone who dared to be himself in a world that didn't always understand him. His time on The Tonight Show will forever be remembered as one of television's most magical and most bittersweet moments.